A warm welcome to a new episode of Many Machines, One Bloke, Absolutely No Script. Today I will explain why I don't like safety wrenches on a lathe. As you may can see, my small finger is a little bit blue and red, and I will explain how that happened. Yesterday I was working with this exquisite Weiler lathe, and for it is a modern lathe, they provide a safety wrench for the chuck of the machine. And the mechanism works as such. You have a safety sleeve that is spring-loaded, and you have to push against the force of the spring to open the square that you can insert into the chuck. And while I was pushing down the wrench to open the sleeve, the force I used turned into a turning force that let the chuck and the wrench and my hand run down, and my finger was squeezed between the lever of the chuck and the machine itself. So you know now why I don't like these safety wrenches on modern machines, and I'm going to make my own wrench that is for my personal use, and it will not have a safety mechanism because I find it very inconvenient to use this safety wrench. I found a 20mm round piece of stock, and it's a 4140 chrome moly steel, and the length will be 85mm, and that is the starting point for my new personal wrench. Next step is to turn the ends of the round stock. I'm using a CNMG insert, carbide insert. Before I start turning the OD for the square, I had to make some calculations, and the OD must be 14.1mm. The square is 10 by 10. Alright, I turned down the OD, and as you might can see, I'm nearly spot on. It's 0.04 of a millimeter bigger than the calculations, but that is no problem. Okay, the next step is to blend in radius from the small OD to the big OD, sorry, not ID. For blending in the radius, I'm using a carbide insert with a round shape, and I'm just blending it in. And as you might can hear, yes, you can hear it, there are some harmonics, and I have to slow down the speed. It is a very small machine, and it tends to vibrate. Alright. The autofocus does not work. Okay. For milling the square onto the shaft, I use this very neat little thing. It's a simple square block, and there is the bore for a 5C collet, and that is the locking mechanism. I have to assemble all these three parts, can insert my part that I want to mill, and everything's all right. Alright, all parts are put together, and I take this block to the mill and I can start milling the square at the end of this pin. I'm using a carbide end mill that usually is used on CNC milling machines, but you can find them very cheap on eBay. It's a used one, and for some manual operation on this mill, it's good enough. Maybe it's not, it's a little bit worn and not good enough for CNC milling, but for conventional milling it's absolutely okay. And I'm not doing climb cutting, I'm doing conventional milling because of the situation of the spindles of this machine. You can't really climb cut with this machine. Okay, turning the spindle on, and then come to the part I want to mill, and then okay, I think you could hear some chattering, but that is because of this is a tool for a CNC milling machine, and the rigidity and the speeds and feeds I can realize with this machine are far beyond that what the tool usually needs. Okay, you just have to loose your vise and then turn the block to come into a new position. You see that is very easy to creating a square on a OD. Okay, this is the square, and as you maybe can see, I really made it spot on. It's 10 millimeter, and it took me less than 10 minutes to create the square. So this little tool is very neat to create squares or hexes. I do have a hex block that works as well. You just have to use 5C collets, clamp with a 5C collet the part you want to square or you want to hex, and it's a piece of cake doing a square this way. As you can see, the wrench now is completed. I made a lever, and I like it that the lever has no press fit and that it is movable. And another thing I like very much is this small welding spot, not pot. The welding spot I put onto the end so the lever can't fall out. But that's my personal style for those wrenches. I hope you liked the video of the making, and see you next time.